Well, it's now officially, I believe, afternoon. It is on Eastern time, and really glad that you folks could make it on this. I know some will see it live and some will see it recorded, but in any case, I hope it's going to be valuable for you. Actually, the idea of this particular very brief webinar had to do with an article that I was asked to write for our newsletter. That's something that all of our NewView clients get every month. And it had to do with more information about the CARES Act. And once I got into it, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I've got to share this out with everybody because it's going to permit you to do something that with your 401k that you've not been able to do before. And so I'm really excited to share with you. It's going to be brief. It's probably going to be 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. What I'd rather do is have you, instead of interrupting with the questions, what I'd like to do, or keep everybody on this webinar and held, you can, at the end of this presentation, and certainly through it, you'll see a website called newviewtrust.com. And you can email at info or request to that particular website and get your questions answered. But you'll see more of that at the end of the presentation. I just want to make sure that you understand that I'm coming to you today not as an attorney or a CPA, but as the owner and founder of NewView IRA and NewView Trust. We are simply not we are a third-party administrator and a custodian. And so our job isn't to really give you great tax advice or any other advice other than the fact that as a custodian, what we're allowed and permitted to do. So we always ask you to go to your own attorneys and your own CPAs and discuss with them what you heard today and make sure that it's viable and a good solution for you. So I want to make sure and be clear about that up front. Now, NewView is, the reason that I'm with you today is NewView is a self-directed retirement custodian. And a custodian is someone that takes care of somebody else's assets for them. And that's what we do here every day. And we custody over $1.4 billion in client assets, and almost all of it's in retirement plans. And it's all fully self-directed, which means that our clients all make the decisions themselves. So there's no commissions, there's no advice, there's no counsel about individual investments. That's really up to you. And you'll see how this plays out in our presentation and why that might be very interesting to you. Some of you listening and watching it'll be your first time to really hear anything about self-direction. Other of you are far more well schooled in this and are just really interested to get to the 401k portion. So we'll just touch on self-direction briefly throughout the presentation, but we're going to focus on the CARES Act and what that allows you to do. The trouble with employer plans and 401k plans, 403bs, 457, thrift savings plans, and by the way, all those letters and numbers really are quoting the particular section of the IRS code that apply. But back in 1974 and 1975, when these were created, it was all about moving companies off of pension plans, which they often used for their employee retention, to where the employees had to do most of the heavy lifting. And that's what a 401k is, where the employees make the majority of the contributions and employers may or may not make matching contributions to that. I remember my particular story is I got into my employer's plan in 1980, left that employer in 1993, and I was stunned to find out I had over $100,000 saved. It was the most painless way to save. It's how America saves. We save through payroll deduction because we don't get to see the money, and more importantly, our spouses don't get to see the money. And so the problem with these plans, there's many problems with the plans. They're certainly good. The problems with the plans is most of the plans have very reduced choices. So you might find a plan that has 3 different funds you can go in, 5 different funds, sometimes as many as 10. And the reason for that is these funds are pretty much packaged up. These plans are packaged up by Wall Street and sold to employers to use in their 401k plans. And employers don't know too much about investing, so they just basically go along with it, and employees go along with it, and it's a way to accumulate savings, if not wealth, through the individual investments. Here's the problem. The IRS created these around wanting you to save and not getting the money out. and certainly that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people having the freedom to take it out without rules and regulations probably would, and they'd end up with no retirement. But here's the problem. When we talk to people all the time about all the different things you can do in a self-directed IRA, they go, well, I'm sorry, I've got $200,000 in my employer plan. And I talked to them and they said that I couldn't transfer it out because I'm still employed. And I said, well, that's easy. You can always quit. And they say, no, I don't want to lose my job over it. And I particularly understand that. But generally, you need to terminate employment to actually be able to roll that over into a self-directed retirement plan. And you can also open up your own self-directed retirement plan outside of your employer's plan. But if you can't roll that bulk of the money in, that $200,000, it's kind of frustrating because you don't really have enough to do anything with it. And, you know, other things that you can't do in a 401k plan, you can't buy with leverage. So, for example, you can't put 50% down out of your 401k and let's say buy an apartment and rent that out and have that tenant pay back the debt that your 401k got, because you're not allowed to leverage inside a 401k generally for employer plans. And there's penalties and taxes, and some of those things apply to also to self-directed IRAs, but a lot of them don't. They're very unique to employer plans. So I remember back in 2006, 2007, when we had that downturn, the big downturn with the banking scandals and stuff. And at that time, airlines, you know, were having problems. Nothing like they're having today, but they are having problems. So some of the Delta baggage handlers and some pilots contacted me and they said, can I move my money out of my 401k plan because I've been furloughed, and I asked a little bit and I had them go back to their employer, and indeed they were able to use that time when they were briefly furloughed from their 401k plan to get the money out and move it over and self-direct, and had really good successes since. But that's the frustration. If you're in it, the rules don't change. But something's about to change. Now, what's the real attraction about self-direction? I kind of look at it like this. It's choice, right? So like going to Baskin Robbins, you know, and only getting vanilla. I mean, and that's kind of what we get inside of our employer plans. But what about the other 30 flavors that I might like and I might want? But it's more than want. It's really more saying which one of these plans can provide for my family and help me build wealth for my retirement. And there's a group of people that say, I want to self-select, I want to go find them, and I don't want to be limited to the stock markets, stocks and bonds and mutual funds, which even if you're with Charles Schwab and you have all the publicly traded stocks and bonds and issuance at your fingertips, it still doesn't seem as good as some of those things that we see on the private side. Things like rental properties. How would you like to be able to retire and have rental properties kick off income for you, and you still own the asset, but you're able to live off the proceeds of that asset, and the asset value goes up all the time. So people that love real estate, I happen to be one of them, but a lot of our clients love real estate because they see they're holding a hard asset. The other side of that is you can lend money. So you can actually take money, lend it against real estate, secure it with real estate. Are we okay now? This is a testing. All right, we're back up. I apologize for this. So actually, if we had a little bit of a hiccup there, but you're rejoining us at the right time because we're getting into exactly the point of why you tuned in for this. And this is sort of the loophole, I call it, but a very good loophole and legal as it relates to your 401k plan. Now, first, we're going to start to the benefit of all the people that are 72 and older out there. That may be only one or two. But the nice thing is that you are not required to take a minimum distribution out of your IRA or your 401k for this year. And that's basically understanding that everybody's finances have been disrupted in some way in 2020. So that amount that you are forced out, that the government forces out of any type of IRA except of Roth, you're not going to be forced out of it. That's good news. But that's really not what I want. That's not the main thing I want to share with you right now. It's much more around the concept of you being able to take a distribution. And typically, if you're an employer and you take a distribution, if you're able to do it at all, it might be through hardship. If you're under the age of 59 and a half, and it's not a post-tax contribution 401k, and I don't want to get into the details, that's like a Roth-like contribution. Most 401ks do not have those provisions. So most of you out there listening, if you have a 401k, it's likely going to be in pre-tax. If you're in pre-tax condition and you take it out early, that means before age 59 and a half, you're going to have to take a 10% penalty. And in addition, be taxed on that. And the way your tax is at ordinary income tax rate. So if you took out $100,000, it would be layered on top of maybe the $50,000 you earned that year. You'd be taxed in a bracket of $150,000, which is extremely painful. Well, so this is kind of nice. So what they said, the IRS or the Treasury Department has said, all right, no early withdrawal penalties. So that 10% goes away if you're under 59 and a half. You can take up to $100,000 and up to the total that you have in there, up to $100,000. And they went one step better. Those underlying taxes I talked to you about, the ordinary income taxes that you'd have to pay if you were earning $50,000 would not have to be paid in year one. It would be 1/3 of it would be paid in year one. So about $33,000 would be added to your income in year one, year two, another $33,000, and year three, another $33,000, totaling, rounding up to $100,000. That's pretty cool. So there's no doubt that that's great. I mean, the one thing that you have to understand is when you pull money out of a 401k plan, it's no longer going to be invested. So you have to make sure that the investment is going to continue to work for you. But the best part of all is this. The IRS has said, what we're going to allow you to do is when you get to a better place and you get to a place where you're re-earning that income and you have financial stability, that $100,000 that you took out of your IRA, or excuse me, your 401k. And by the way, you can do this with IRAs too, but we're really focused on 401ks today. If you take it out of your 401k, the hard part is you can't get it back in. And that's the real sad part. It's not the fact that you're just foregoing some penalties and spreading taxes. It's the fact that it's no longer there for your retirement. The Treasury Department says we're going to allow you to put this back in. And it doesn't have to come in tomorrow, but it can come in any time during those 3 years. So exactly 3 years from the time that you took it out, actually it's all the way out until 3 years from the time that you took it out until 2022, December 30th, whichever one's sooner. So you got a long time to be able to put the money back in. And so as a protective measure, it's pretty good. Now, who qualifies for all this? Because it doesn't allow everybody to go after their money and do this, because this is the first time that the IRS has allowed 401k participants to do this in 45 years since they were created. So that's basically how it works, and the doors close on this opportunity in December 30, 2020. Now, how do you get qualified to do it? Well, there's a lot of small print. You'll see it on the screen, and I don't want to go through all of it. But I would suggest that that was so broadly written that almost everybody qualifies for it. And you basically self-nominate yourself and make the statement that, yes, I was affected by any of these points and I qualify it for any of these points. Is this going to be audited? I suppose it could be, but it would be pretty hard for someone to suggest that you weren't financially impacted in some of the ways that we talk about on this screen here about COVID. So take a look at this and make your determinations on whether you qualify or no. I'm going to assume that you do as I go through the rest of this discussion today, the short presentation. So what this is really allowing you to do is I'm going to take a distribution because of COVID event. And that's the declaration that you'll have to make. And you make that declaration to your current 401k administrator. So what else do you need to understand? Well, the whole point of our discussion today is not to take the money out and use it to go on vacation. Besides, you can't fly anywhere now anyway. It's not to take out and pay old debt, because that's probably not a good use of your retirement. Thinking clearly about what retirement plans are for to prepare for your retirement, then I think you would be far more drawn to the fact that you can get this money back in. But I would suggest the fact that just because the Treasury Department says you can put it back with your employer, that would be the last place I'd choose to put it back. At least put it back into an IRA, because you're not forced to take it back and put it back to the same place you took it from. As long as it's a qualified custodian that can hold those assets, those retirement assets, you can actually use this as an opportunity to do an indirect rollover. Well, many of you don't know what that means, but it basically means when the employer distributes the funds to the employee, and then the employee actually writes a check, personal check, to a new custodian to hold it. And so NewView Trust, thankfully, is in this business. And as we talked about before, it allows you to self-direct. So you'd be moving your funds, the $100,000 or up to $100,000, however much you want to move over, to yourself, and then to a self-directed IRA, doing something that you could never do as an employee of that company without quitting the company. Do you see how kind of cool that is? And the process of opening an account at NewView is very simple. You can do it online. I think it's much better people call in, because we'll step you through it, whether you do it online or you do it on a form. There's many different ways to do it. Probably takes a total of about 15 minutes, but I wouldn't even suggest you do this. Just what I would suggest you do is you call in and schedule a time with our account specialists, and they'll help walk you through the process, because part of that decision making is what kind of account really fits your needs here, and what do you plan on doing with it? Because many people already know what they want to invest their funds in. They just can't get their hands on the funds. Other people see the benefit of the freedom of moving it to NewView, but they're not sure what they can do. So that conversation can go any way that you like. But what we'd like to do, so what you end up doing is you're ending up opening the account. You can fund the account. It's called a rollover contribution to your IRA at NewView Trust. And there you can have the freedom to do all those types of investments that you can do. You can actually still be in the stock market, because we can give you access to an Ameritrade account on our platform. The beauty of doing that is just moving it from your employer to be that. You'll have access to all publicly traded stocks and bonds, not just the few that your 401k has. But in addition, you'll be able to move those quickly over to our platform if you want to buy non-traditional investments as well. So we understand that whatever you can have multiple retirement accounts at multiple places, but where you want to gravitate and start moving those funds to is to a platform that gives you the broadest amount of choices, which we do at NewView Trust. Now, here's the steps to remember, just to briefly go back and cover, and we had some audio difficulty at the beginning, so I am not sure how much of that all of you heard. But first of all, you're going to have to go to your employer if you're interested in doing this and unlocking your 401k. Go back to your employer and say, go to the administrator, and that's generally through your HR department, and ask them if they're offering the CARES Act distribution option, because they're not required to do it. I would suggest that if you do go there and they're not, ask them why, and ask them if they could go ahead and do it. Most of the time, the administrators don't always keep up with all the latest knowledge. I would basically harangue them into doing it, because 401k programs are considered a a employee retention tool, a benefit. So make sure it's a benefit for you. Number 2, request the distribution. So you're going to ask them for the form that you can fill out a distribution for the CARES Act. So under the CARES Act, and we go back to that slide that we talked about, and by the way, there'll be a way to get more information on this at the end of this presentation shortly. But get the distribution paperwork filled out, and that the check and the funds will either be sent to you by wire or however you work with your outgoing administrator, or by check. Once you get that check, or you don't have to wait to get the check, contact us at NewView and we'll open up your account for it. And that account will be waiting for the funds when you submit them. Or you can do it all at the same time. And once that account is funded and it's been open for 7 days, because that's a right of rescission that the IRS requires all new account holders to have, you're going to have access to the widest breadth of investment choices imaginable. As a matter of fact, I put it a different way. You get to invest in everything the IRS does not prohibit. And I long for the fact if you haven't been with NewView before, I will tell you our community has such successes that they share with each other. It's amazing. You want to be part of that as well. So I'd like to thank you for your time. Sorry about the brief hiccup on the audio. And want you to understand that the best way to all of this is coming in quickly. And I know we haven't slowed down to process on a one-on-one, but text CARES to 484848 on your cell phone. And you're going to receive not only a free e-guide, which will tell you about all the different things that you're allowed to invest in and the rules once you become a NewView Trust client. You're also going to get a link to the CARES Act portion that has to do with IRAs. I will tell you, you'll probably come back to our slides and want to look at them, because that I've had to read the code, and it was a painful process to go through. But I've summarized it here, hopefully for you to be able to take action. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, and look forward to having you, if not a client of NewView, having you soon. Thank you very much.